So for that perspective, people don't just click because they're careless. They click because they're humans. So how can leaders rethink this and ensure that they're encouraging people to act in a positive way as opposed to hiding the mistakes?
And then we enter indeed the more psychology fields. From my perspective, I think leaders should really understand that people don't click because they're careless, as you mentioned. They click because their brains are wired for like efficiency, trust, rapid decision making in a world where there's like overloads of information. And what we, I think, need to understand and recognize is that hackers, like real hackers, they probably know more about psychology than most cybersecurity professionals do. And hackers really exploit that psychology. They use urgency, authority, they use fear, curiosity. They really trigger like that instinctive, fast thinking response before like the rational and analysis even kicks in. So even the most cyber aware individuals can be tricked. So I also always say, like, I'm not saying that I'm never gonna click on a phishing link because they're becoming much more sophisticated. And if my brain is like in a hot state where there's a lot of distraction, there's a lot of stress, if like the hacker finds the right moment for me as well to trick me in pushing that right psychological button, I probably will still click. But I think then it's really about like knowing what to do. So I think from a leader's perspective, reflecting back to your question, Warren, it's like leaders should shift away from like blame and more go into compassion. So really recognizing that clicks reflects like being human, not directly reflecting being negligent. Sorry. And it's about really embedding psychological safety so people can report mistakes and near misses very openly, allowing the team to learn and to adapt from that perspective.
Secure CyberConnect are thrilled to be part of the Cyber Leaders Summit this coming 22nd and 23rd of September in Brussels. This private, curated forum brings together senior practitioners, decision makers, and thought leaders from across cyber-focused, actionable insights, strategic leadership, and peer-driven conversations. It's about more than trends. We're tackling real challenges, sharing breach case stories, and navigating regulation, whilst building meaningful relationships that move the industry forward. If you're looking for sharp thinking, practical takeaways, and high-level connections, then register your interest and please see the link in the show notes and the bio.
Welcome to the Secure CyberConnect podcast with Jay Adamson and Maureen Atkinson. We're originally by information cybersecurity, technology and talent acquisition professionals. We shared our journeys, unique perspectives, and offer advice and guidance.
Our topics on this episode will be why cybersecurity fails without humans, culture, behaviour, diversity, and leadership. Today we're honoured to be joined by Veerle Peeters. Veerle is a people-powered cybersecurity strategist and a keynote speaker with a strong focus on the human side of cyber awareness, behaviour, and culture. She's also founder of the consultancy Cyb-HER-Strong, helping clients to understand the current maturity level of their security or data culture and converting a desired security mindset from aspirational into the way that people actually behave. After more than 18 years within the consulting sector, including working at PwC and Deloitte, she now works with startups, organisations and governments and public audiences to make cybersecurity accessible, inclusive, actionable and human-centred. She empowers organisations, parents, future cyber defenders to navigate today's threats with confidence. Veerle, welcome to the Secure CyberConnect podcast and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for the invitation.
So we always kick things off by asking you if you could just give us a very brief high-level overview on some of the key themes that we're going to be exploring in our discussion today.
Well, I think in this podcast, we will be focusing on key themes around, like, especially the human factors of cybersecurity. including culture, behavior, awareness. That's my main working topics, but also about diversity, leadership, and some practical strategies for developing like a resilient and an inclusive organization from a cyber perspective.
And one question we always kick things off with is, if you'd be kind enough to share something that you're proud of or maybe excited about that your LinkedIn profile doesn't typically show.
Let me think. My first answer would be, I'm very proud of my daughter, Lucy. I'm thinking if I mentioned her on my LinkedIn profile, yes or no. But that's definitely something I'm very, very, very proud of. She's an amazing girl, turning 14 this year. So challenging times coming ahead. But also very challenging. She's like very inspiring to me also to learn in what kind of world she's living. Also what the effect of the digital world has on her world today. So yeah, that's something that I'm very proud of.
Absolutely. And look, there's always a point in somebody's career or somebody's life that, you know, presents itself as a particular challenge or an incident that really shapes your views on cybersecurity. What was it with you?
I have like many, if you're working for almost 20 years already. But I think like a very significant challenge that profoundly shaped my view also for myself on cybersecurity was like the realization, like more than just over 10 years ago, that like effective security is just more than like the technical matters, and it's actually deeply human. Because like so many that don't know cybersecurity, and I at one point I was also part of that. Did I ever think about ending up in cybersecurity. That cyber is mainly about like technology and tools. Maybe going back a bit, so I started as a forensic investigator. I'm a criminologist from my background with sociology in there. So really focusing on that one. So also from forensics, at one point we saw like different cases where it's a lot of time good people making bad decisions. It's also about how the organizational culture influences like how people take risks. So I started looking into like risk culture from that perspective. And then at one point there was this project when I was still working at PwC, coming from the UK, for a client in Belgium that really was around like, what is our security culture? How can we measure that? And how can we further improve? And at that point, like one of the partners, he was like, Veerle, you know something about organizational culture and risk. And I was like, yeah, but I have no clue what cybersecurity is all about. I'm not at all technical. But let's see how we can combine. I had like a session with one of the directors at the time, really asking him like, okay, I'm going to do like this cybersecurity project. Like, give me like cyber for dummies one-on-one. What do I need to know? What are the basic principles? And I started on the project, and it was like super inspiring. And it really like started to like burn a little flame for me. And after that project, I switched departments. So that was life changing. And now that's how I started my now almost 10 years within cybersecurity. So I really noticed that like the toughest issues weren't like the firewalls and the encryption, but it's like very often in like the subtle ways in which people interpret and follow or ignore the policies. And every process really involves people. And I saw that even the most sophisticated technical controls, they really fail if individuals aren't engaged, aren't aware, or invested in like the security outcomes. And this challenge revealed that culture and awareness are not like really soft topics, but they are really central pillars and for resilience and for trust. So I think from that perspective, for me, the true beauty in cybersecurity is what I found like 10 years ago and opened up a whole world for me. It's really like that human dimension, translating those technical risks into accessible stories, in empowering people, in turning fear into resilience. So every successful case of changed behavior or a policy becoming an engaging conversation is like a small victory for me. And it's proof that cybersecurity is at its best like a very creative and collaborative journey. So I think this challenge taught me that like the real strength lies where science and humanity meet. And it's like an elegant dance between like attack and defense within like empowered teams. It's really like a very integrative success story when it comes to cybersecurity.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you sharing the journey and the perspective there, and it's certainly something that myself and Jay agree with. That human factor is very important. A lot of people in the industry at the moment are scared of AI and quantum, for instance, replacing their jobs, but it comes down to technology being integrated with human hand in hand, not replacing it. Then you mentioned behavior. Why is behavior, not awareness, the real challenge within cybersecurity?
That's also when I was like in the last 10 years talking to clients. It's also always where I started, because it's about semantics, but I think it's a very important distinction to understand. Behavior is really about changing behaviors. It's about what people are actually doing. So awareness really focuses on providing information. That's through training, policies, campaigns, to help people understand what threats exist and what like best practices look like. However, and behavior is really like doing, people really taking it into their hands and actually showing that into practice. So, and we still see like there's like a well documented knowing doing gap. So it's not just because people know about secure practices that they really apply them, especially under pressure and habits. I always give the example of, if you ask 100 people that they are aware that like a strong password is like necessary, probably like, and this is like just like a number like this, but like 90% will say, yeah, I know strong passwords are important. If we then do a password complexity test and test in practice, I can bet that it's like less than 90% of the people that have like a safe password in place. So that's the difference between...
More like 10%.
Yeah, that's the difference between knowing, awareness, being aware, and really doing the thing, applying the thing in practice. So why is behavior such a hard part? It's because like those new habits require really more than information. True behavior change means people consistently follow secure practices. For me, there's like two words that are very important. It's like consistent and continuity. So even when they're under time pressure, even when it's inconvenient, it's really, what are people doing when no one is looking? That's like the behavior part. That's the culture part. So humans are very often influenced by the culture in an organization, by peer behaviors, by stress. It's really, for me, it's like those are fatigue, stress, information overload. That's like the human malwares in our human operating system that also needs to be patched and updated from time to time. And that's factors that training alone rarely addresses. So real resilience comes from environments where secure actions are part of like daily routines, really supported by leadership. There's nudging, so there's psychology in there, there's feedback. And there's really a positive culture that makes safe behavior like the easy and obvious choice.
And you mentioned obviously, daily routines there. Are there any other ways that organizations can integrate cyber awareness into the daily routines rather than it just being, compliance exercise, for instance?
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. Very often it still starts from a compliance perspective. They need to be audited. It's like a tick mark. We have provided like the policy to our people. They have like clicked a button when they receive the email of I have read and I have understood. But I think organizations can successfully integrate cyber awareness into daily routines by making it very practical, personal, and it's really woven into the everyday work. It's not just a tick box exercise, and I think it is pretty complex. It's also going away from the technical cybersecurity, and it's really deep diving into like change management principles. So it's also not just putting like one poster on the wall. It's really integrating it into. There's aspects of leadership. There is like governance needs to be there. It's looking into like the whole employee life cycle from recruitment, onboarding, training, even like with the exit conversations. It's about the communications that are within the company, the symbols that are there, and then the technology supporting the behavior. So it's moving beyond compliance. What's very interesting, it's like when I started my journey here, it's really looking at like sounds as like a very good maturity curve. Also really focusing on the psychology, on how people work. Like there's a maturity curve as well, how people interact with information. So that goes from listening to they understand, like they engage and they own. So that's really what you need to build up on during those programs in organizations. And traditional approaches often focus on like the mandatory training, like the annual refreshers policy that is really designed to satisfy the regulatory part, but do not really change like the real world behavior. So in order to be very effective, I think awareness needs to feel relevant, engaging. It's connected to like every person's role. So you also need to identify like high risks. What risks are people engaged with? Do they confront in their daily work? So not just generic rules. So yeah, it's really embedding them in the tools that they are using. Leadership is also very important. So it's really walking the talk. Not only board and C-suite, I think middle management also has a very important role in order to really showcase what is expected from their teams. They're very often much closer. And it's also about involving like feedback loops, recognition, really celebrating like positive behaviors, proud stories that are there, promptly addressing risky actions. So that's the middle management role, and really enforcing the idea of security is like everyone's responsibility. It's like everyone is part of the security team from that perspective.
No, I appreciate you sharing. I think, yeah, it is a collaborative effort, and we do need to celebrate these small wins. That's a great way to influence culture within an organization, especially if you haven't got security champions, for instance, internally. Now, we've certainly seen a shift away from the pointing and the blaming culture, because unfortunately there was a lot of that in the industry. And I know security professionals and IT professionals are perhaps a bit reluctant to put their hand up when they see something suspicious or if they've made a mistake. So from that perspective, people don't just click because they're careless. They click because they're humans. So how can leaders rethink this and ensure that they're encouraging people to act in a positive way as opposed to hiding the mistakes?
Yeah, then we enter indeed the more psychology field. From my perspective, I think leaders should really understand that people don't click because they're careless, as you mentioned. They click because their brains are wired for like efficiency, trust, rapid decision making in a world where there's like overload of information. And what we, I think, need to understand and recognize is that hackers, like real hackers, they probably know more about psychology than most cybersecurity professionals do. And hackers really exploit that psychology. They use urgency, authority, they use fear, curiosity. They really trigger like that instinctive, fast thinking response before like the rational and analysis even kicks in. So it's from that perspective, I think it's really understanding like how the brain works, and how the brain misses and processes threats. So humans face, I think you both can agree with that, we face like thousands of digital cues, like our world is like very digital. There's a lot of decisions that we need to make on a daily basis, leading to that decision like create some kind of fatigue, and there's like cognitive overload. Our brain is at the end of the evening, I'm like I'm fried. So what the brain does is it uses like shortcuts. It's like system one thinking, like quick, automatic, emotional, to filter information and take action, especially when we don't have a lot of time, we're under pressure, there is a lot of distraction. So attackers really craft like those phishing and social engineering messages to exploit these shortcuts that our brain is doing. So they're mimicking authority, they're using those deadlines, they're sparking curiosity. So users act reflexively, sorry. So it's more as a reflex and not to reflect from that perspective. So even the most cyber aware individuals can be tricked. So I also always say, like, I'm not saying that I'm never going to click on a phishing link, because they're becoming much more sophisticated. And if my brain is like in a hot state where there's a lot of distraction, there's a lot of stress, if like the hacker finds the right moment for me as well, to trick me in pushing that right psychological button, I probably will still click. But I think then it's really about like knowing what to do. So I think from a leader's perspective, reflecting back to your question, Warren, it's like leaders should shift away from like blame and more go into compassion. So really recognizing that clicks reflects like being human, not directly reflecting being negligent, sorry. And it's about really embedding psychological safety so people can report mistakes and near misses very openly, allowing the team to learn and to adapt from that perspective. And it's also investing in realistic simulations or microdoses, so our brain is also really trained into recognizing those things. And if it becomes a reflex, that we are training our brain that those specific situations should trigger like the reflex of not clicking the mail.
Yeah, I think it's important to put that into practice and build those neuro pathways so you do just react as reflex, as you mentioned. And something I picked up on earlier, and I think throughout this discussion, you've really articulated things in both a complex manner and a simple to understand manner. So how, when it comes to storytelling, how powerful is that when it making cybersecurity actionable, especially with boards, for instance, or even that middle management that you mentioned?
Yeah, I think just overall for every audience that we are talking to, I think storytelling is key. We probably will hear this coming in the following question as well. For me, storytelling is very powerful in making cybersecurity very actionable as well, because it leverages how the brain like naturally learns and remembers and engages. Narratives step really into emotions. They activate like multiple regions in the brain, and they help people internalize lessons and making security advice memorable and relevant. It's again, let's look at the psychology behind storytelling. So when people hear a story, they don't just think about the process and they don't just process effects. They really emotionally invest, they empathize with the characters, they imagine themselves being in a similar situation. And this emotional engagement really releases hormones like oxytocin, which boosts like trust and empathy. And dopamine, which then on its turn like enhances like focus and memory retention. So if we look at research, it really shows that information which is embedded in stories is retained up to, I think, 65 to 70% longer than standalone facts and bullet points, making narrative-driven learning, especially for changing behavior and building habits, very effective. So stories really create like mental hooks. They anchor the lessons in real world context, and they drive home why certain security choices matters and why they count. So let me give some examples. So if I say to you both like iconic lines as "I'll be back," it comes from which movie?
Are you going to take that one, Warren? I was waiting for you to step in, but Terminator.
Yes. So, and if I say "Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo," it comes from.
Oh, God, you've got me on that one, I'm afraid. Warren?
No idea to send. What was that?
No idea. I'm talking to boys.
Sorry.
It's from Cinderella.
Wow.
It's like
should
the
know.
godmother. Voilà. And if I say "wax on, wax off,"
The Karate Kid.
yes, indeed. So it's like instantly brings back memories. It evokes an emotion. It's like easy to recall. And it can trigger like mental images as well, even decades later. So, and even with very good stories, I'm gonna joke now, but like Mary Poppins, even as a non-English speaker, like 35 years later, I can still remember the words as a supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Absolutely. And we can all remember Dick Van Dyke's terrible English Cockney accent as well.
Yes, indeed. So I think reflecting back from that perspective on storytelling in cybersecurity, it's like really bringing stories about like close call, like cleverly avoided scams, like famous breaches. Remember when an entire city was shut down by a ransomware? Like those things stick much longer than like warnings or policy slides. And it's like making very simple analogies, such as I think they're like already like the classics of comparing passwords to toothbrushes, like you don't share and you change them regularly. Turn abstract rules in like relatable mental images from people, and very often when I'm doing like awareness sessions and in trainings, like if I have to explain people to like why is updating your computer so important? Everyone knows that annoying pop-up with like update now or update later. Everyone pushes like later because it's never very convenient. Then I always have like tell a story and say like, okay, imagine you're sitting at a restaurant with a good friend and suddenly you get like a text message and you look at the message and it's your neighbor saying like, hi there, just parked the car in front of my house, but I saw your front door is open. Are you home? Is everything okay? What will you do? Will you stay just very quiet and just continue enjoying your dinner, or will you react, at least sending back to the neighbor that like, oh, I'm not home, can you have a look, can you please close my door, and so forth. I think most people will choose the second option. And then I try to make the analogy with that pop-up as well. So that's actually like a software provider saying like, we found a backdoor standing open, please update your computer, update the software in order to close the door back down. And I think it really like resonates much more, and that a lot of people after that training click the now button when they need to update it as well. And I think also when looking into cybersecurity, and that's from my perspective, we also need to be very careful about the storytelling that we are doing. Because very often I hear like a story of us versus them, and that can backfire as well. So it's like very common that we use like damaging mistakes in cybersecurity as framing a message as us the experts, versus them, like the users or the public, which can make people feel alienated or blamed about a specific thing. And that divides like triggers of defensiveness and disengagement that we need to be very aware of. So they really undermine the trust and openness that is needed for like real behavior change. And again, so if I may, I like to refer back a bit to, there's like also again like psychology behind it. Like you have like the self-fulfilling prophecy. I think a lot of people kind of know what it's about. So when people are told what is expected from them, positive or negative, they often unconsciously conform to those expectations, reinforcing like the original assumption. So from a security perspective, if staff are told like you're smart and you're vigilant, let's show the best security results, people will try to live up to that positive image and their energy. And there's like much more energy that you will put into keeping the status quo, that people are already thinking positive about you, than changing that difference. The same with the Pygmalion effect. It's like when one group is encouraged and believed in, and another group is like dismissed. So that's the us versus them. Us, we are the good ones. We know how to do secure behavior. Versus them, they are stupid. They always click on those very obvious links. It also shows that the group that is encouraged often outperforms the group that is a bit dismissed. So also in security training, positive reinforcement, reinforcing a team's ability in progress increases really the motivation and performance, while negative framing can create disengagement and resistance. And what I very often see is like that ethical hacking teams are always very proud of if they create like a test and they do a phishing test and there's a lot of people that have clicked. And very often we say like 50% of the employees clicked the phishing link. It unintentionally like normalizes the risk again. So it's like, I clicked the link, but I was not the only one, so that's fine. I can disappear in that big group of people clicking the link. But if you will switch that message and you turn it into, for example, 30% of you like did a very good job, you did not click on the link, then that group is like super motivated. But the 70% that clicked on the link will think like, I want to be part of that group that is recognized, that is positively enforced as well. So from that perspective, again, I think it's very interesting from like a more social sciences, a communication science, psychology science, to really start thinking about how we frame that storytelling within cybersecurity. So I think for me, that's like a very, very important part.
I appreciate you sharing, and excuse me, really, really fantastic analogies as well. Probably going to steal a few of them, so appreciate that. And look, you're a proud mother, and you're obviously a protector of the digital realm itself. How do we raise cyber smart kids, especially in a world where AI, deepfakes, misinformation, and of course online manipulation is sort of running rampant?
Yeah, I think it's a very personal passion project for me as well. That's also what Cyb-HER-Strong partly is about. I'm really focusing, of course, on still helping organizations do like corporate awareness raising and those kind of things. That's really my niche, my core. But on the other hand, I really also want to give back to society and want to focus much more on how can we help parents and kids like be safe in this very digital world, because raising cyber smart kids today is both an effort, a team effort, and a very creative story. I always like to say, like the old saying, like it takes a village to raise a child. And I think it's never been truer. Like in cybersecurity, this means like there's schools, there's society, there's parents, there's caregivers. and they all play a role in modeling and reinforcing like smart online behaviors. Yet at this moment right now, most adults, if I also look at parents in my close friends group, they feel unprepared. We come from a generation that went from paper to using a computer. We learned how to click, and now we get like messages of stop clicking. Many teachers as well. Yeah, we didn't grow up in today's risks and the resources to support like open, practical dialogue about that. And I think that's very crucial to need that accessibility, to have practical guidance and having that much stronger. And again, stories cut through that digital noise. And that's actually also one of my proud stories, I think, what I did in the last couple of years at Deloitte in Belgium. It actually started with my daughter coming home from school, I think when she was around the age of 10, 11, so 4 years ago. She got like an email address from school and a password, of course. It wasn't a very strong password. And I was a bit frustrated, and I know it's like I'm a bit biased from a work perspective, from a cybersecurity perspective. But I was thinking, if you as a school decide to give like my child an email address, which actually equals like giving her access to the whole World Wide Web, because email equals like a login, and she can now create like a login on every website that is out there. I also expect the school to give her guidance on what is a strong password. And a strong password doesn't need to be like very complex, because I love unicorns with like an exclamation mark is much more, it's much stronger than the password based on her birthday that she had. So I kind of, instead of being the annoying mom at the principal's office, I went to the Deloitte Cider leadership and I pitched this idea, and we actually created this very nice, from our purpose perspective in Belgium, a very nice program around like Ella the cyber hero. So we created a comic book for 10 to 12-year-olds. There's a lesson plan for teachers. And in the last 3 years, from Deloitte Belgium, we gave like 100 sessions in Belgian schools to kids from that age range. In order to give them like true storytelling, true engaging, like fun activities to understand what is like a firewall, what's a password, like what is phishing. So really navigating those online challenges with those kids. And I think, again, that's like a very powerful story of storytelling, but I think we need a lot more storytelling towards parents and teachers in order for us to also feel confident on that topic.
And talking a bit more about diversity, inclusion, representation isn't just about numbers. How do we redefine what? And we've talked about this a lot with regards to the cyber community, but in terms of redefining what a cyber leader looks like beyond the stereotypical image of someone who knows it all, sits at the top, should we not be looking more around things such as values and capability and inclusivity? Is that not more important going forward?
Yeah, I fully agree with that reasoning and that thinking, Jay. I think a representation in cybersecurity leadership runs much deeper than meeting those diversity targets and quotas. And I think there is a movement happening now, and change is happening now. It's more about redefining what true cyber leadership means. And from my perspective, a holistic cybersecurity leader is not just a technical expert, but he or she is like a strategist, a communicator, a mentor, a culture shaper, who really builds trust across the whole organizations. And I believe, and I see that already, that there is like a very evolving role within CISOs and cyber leaders, from more technical to strategic. it requires like more a blend of business acumen, emotional intelligence, and the ability to drive organizational transformation. And modern leaders must be able to translate like those complex technical risks into clear business priorities, like champion resilience from the boardroom to the front line, and inspire those diverse teams to see themselves as part of the security mission. So true representation means like fostering leadership that reflects different backgrounds. It's not only a gender gender issue, but it's about like really including like different backgrounds, different skills, different thinking styles, different life experiences. So not just hiring for like one profile or one skill set. So I think the qualities of a modern cyber leader, they care for both people and technology, valuing empathy, communication, and collaboration as highly as like the hard technical skills. And they champions inclusion by making like cybersecurity accessible and relevant for all. So tearing down the gatekeeper mindset and building teams that mirror more the communities and the customers that they protect.
Yeah, and I think that filters down into empowering the next generation of professionals as well. I think, we've got to shift that mindset from just learning endless skills to actually building something meaningful in terms of people's career journeys. The talent pipeline as such, it still feels we've made a huge amount of progress for sure, and we talk about this an awful lot. And we've seen huge strides made in the last year, a year or two for sure. It still feels very misaligned, though, to be honest. And in your opinion, which overlooked communities can bring fresh cyber perspectives to the sector?
I think indeed, like what you say, it's about skills, but I often say it's much more about like the mindsets that people have. Very often I'm using the picture of like a Jedi master with its swords, conquering the Force. But the Force can be different things, and that's indeed like from those angles. Is it data protection? Is it privacy? Is it like the psychology? But in terms of empowering like the next generation, I think I've worked very close with like the Hacking Games. It's a startup in the UK. And what I find very interesting, and I'm really in love with their mission, is that they're really about like transforming like digital curiosity of that next Gen Z generation into like creating a generation of hacker heroes. So what we see, also linking back to those risks that kids are facing today, is that organized cyber gangs are really grooming kids from gaming platforms at an epidemic scale. I think that's really a societal problem. There's a lot of evidence from the FBI, Interpol, Europol, the National Crime Agency in the UK, really showing that like organized cyber gangs identify those kids from as young as like 10 years old, using cheat codes on gaming platforms and grooming them into their cyber gangs. So I think there's like a huge potential of overlooked talent that is sitting there, because kids are hacking currently. So, but let's also change that into a movement that goes beyond psychology and turning those interests by engaging with those gamers, with grassroots communities, like daily content, really ethical hacking, esports competitions, and so forth. Storytelling is there, again, very important. So for me, like, that's the key pillar of the Hacking Games message, is that very communities who are very avid gamers, that they're very overlooked with the talent that they are that they are having. So there's a lot of, I think if we look at the generations, it's like 92% of Gen Z that are playing video games, but it's also about, they're using those platforms currently just for fun. But what they're also building is like really critical thinking. They're collaborating in those games. There's like digital literacy. There's like resilience under pressure. Everything needs to go very quick. And those skills are all very vital in like a cybersecurity careers. So gamers are the untapped cyber defenders out there. They adapt, they're adaptable, they're already mastering the challenges and the mindset needed within cybersecurity. I think the hacking games there are connecting the dots, turning like the digital play into like digital protection, helping them find like alternative pathways into the cyber industry. A lot also like very unconventional talent, because what we hear is if you talk to CISOs, there's like daily attacks, but more and more the attacks come from unconventional talent. And we often have conventional talent sitting in the seats trying to defend. So I think there's a very interesting potential. But on another note, I think it's also the evolution of our society from STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, into STEAM, adding like the A from the arts. And that's also welcoming creative thinkers, it's storytellers, designers with more backgrounds outside of the classic tech, which opens the field even broader to more innovative talent out there. It's also how I got my place within cybersecurity. I'm definitely part of the A of the arts with my social sciences background. So people uniquely positioned to anticipate like new threats and communicate in secure ways. So it's really about reimagining, I think, the cyber pipeline. Diversity is not like a nice to have, but I think it's a like very strategic necessity, and overlooked in many ways. But it's a key to a safer digital future.
I appreciate you sharing there. And I think it is important for us, as an industry, to engage with these pockets of communities, for instance, so that going a step beyond obviously just raising awareness on digital platforms, for instance, is, go into where they are, engaging with their communities at their events, for instance, and then raising awareness of, the pathways and the benefits and the impact. I think the impact is something that speaks to a lot of them highly. Especially ones that I've engaged with that are coming from that gaming background, for instance. And as you mentioned, they are computer illiterate. A lot of them got deep technical understanding without even realizing it, because of the people that they're exposed to in some of these gaming platforms. And with that in mind, how else can organizations make cyber education look more like a game as opposed to a test?
Yeah, I think with that, I think that's an amazing mindset. And I think it should be executed much more. But if cyber education looked more like a game than a test, I think it would transform more from passive, easily forgotten training into like active learning and truly changing behavior. And I think I like to use like the cybercrime game is like a company I'm currently working on an amazing product with as well. And the key focus is really to gamification, but really put serious game into that cyber training. And why does that work? Is because it's the experience goes over memorization. Instead of like reading slides, ticking check boxes, participants really immerse themselves as the attacker or the defender, designing themselves like phishing campaigns, manipulating like digital routines, and making real decisions under pressure. And this role reversal boosts like emotional engagement again, and makes like the risk more intuitive and not abstract. I think integrating play also provides like the immediate feedback loop, which is also very important from a psychology perspective. like players see the direct outcomes of their choices, which enhances like personal responsibility, and which builds like long-term behavior-based memory. That's again those neural pathways that we are trying to do their job, which is far superior to like traditional theory-based approaches. It's about triggering that curiosity, bringing in repetition. So gamification really taps into the intrinsic motivation, curiosity, achievement, like friendly competition. It encouraged people to replay scenarios until like best practices become like second nature. So I think for me that's like something I miss. There's also misconception sometimes, like if we add like a quiz at the end of some slides, we call it gamified, but I think we really should take more like those serious gaming principles, those psychology elements of creating engagement, that storytelling, creating those hooks in there. That is very important. And that's what I'm currently doing as well. And I really like my current engagement of really thinking with that organization. They already have like this amazing game from an awareness perspective, but to really further build on how can we build additional elements. Like there's a 66-day boot camp, some infotainment. It's really entertainment learning that they try to focus on, going away from those tick box compliant slide decks that are out there. So I really believe, again, play really enforces like that human behavior.
Appreciate you sharing there. And from a leadership perspective, how do resilient leaders build resilient teams?
I think, again, I think a lot of things from my perspective are already set. It's really focusing on people, not just the processes, creating those environments of trust. That psychological safety is very important, shared purpose. So I think, again, it's about like modeling that humility and that openness, where leaders openly acknowledge that. I think it was said in the beginning as well, that not everyone has, like, not even the CISO has all the answers in a rapidly changing threat landscape. So it's about inviting questions. It's about inviting feedback, so that people are reporting mistakes without blame, making it safe to learn quickly from incidents rather than hide them. Like, it's that psychological safety is very important, that teams need to know that they won't be punished for honest errors, which is, again, that human side. It's not being negligent. It's about speaking up. It's really championing diversity and inclusion. Like, holistic leaders know the diverse perspectives, and they transform awareness into the daily practice. So let's make sure that those nudges come back throughout the day of people. It's not like just like that one poster saying like, we are a very secure company, but it's really trying to see like, how can we bring that messaging from time to time to people, that they start reflecting on like, there again, there is this message of we need to be very secure in everything that we do. So it really starts to become like part of the DNA of the organization.
And obviously, following on in terms of leadership, you're going to be speaking at the and participating as well at the Cyber Leadership Summit coming up, and we're looking forward to seeing you there. Just talking a little bit about around this. What excites you most about that, and why do you think it's so important for cyber professionals to meet at events such as this and share, their challenges and their solutions?
Yeah, I'm very curious. It's my first time at the Cyber Leader Summit. So I will be indeed on the first day participating in the panel about cyber culture. Surprise, surprise. And the second day I will be moderating the whole day. So I'm very much looking forward to that. For me, it's all about making connections, inspiring people and being to be inspired. I like to learn. I'm an endless learner. But I think from what I see, it's like it's a smaller group of people. It's very close. It's focused. It's really focused discussions. I think they're very extremely valuable because they foster like candid exchanges that can't really happen in like large forums or through generic webinars. So I think it creates like direct value of like more intimate and targeted dialogue where it creates trust and honesty. Also more like practical insights and peer-to-peer wisdom that is shared. So I think in a rapidly changing landscape, like no single leader has like all the answers. So small group formats where they level the playing field and where you enable like peer monitoring, there's like a safe space to yeah voice some concerns maybe from your part. There's like lessons learned that can be shared. I think I'm really looking forward to that.
And is there anything in terms of emerging challenges that you think may be pertinent for the summit to address? And is there anything that you want to specifically talk about yourself?
Emerging challenges. I think it's not really emerging. It's been out there, like the human-centric threats. For me, that's like, of course, my field of interest. Everything related to social engineering, insider risk. But as you mentioned, there's a lot happening on AI perspective. So I think from voice phishing, like the phishing perspective, it will evolve. Like AI can do a lot of things with those deep fakes. If you have a few sentences from the CEO, he can call you. I think there's a lot of creative playing fields currently for hackers. The talent shortages and skills gaps within the cyber industry, I find that very interesting topics. AI and automation risks, I think for me, that's like very fast-paced adoption of AI tools, introduces new vulnerabilities, ethical dilemmas, governance concerns to a lot of organizations. So I'm really looking forward to have those discussions during the summit as well.
And just looking at towards the future a bit more, what keeps you alert about the human side of cyber over the coming years? Do you think it's going to get more and more complex with the ever ongoing generational shifts that we've already seen, I guess, with Gen Z and Gen Alpha coming through, and of course beyond that?
Yeah, I think what keeps attention sharp related to that is like the realization for me that technology is only as strong as the people and the culture behind it. So people are always involved. Technology can do a lot of things, but people are always involved. And indeed, especially the threats become more personalized, they become more complex, more psychologically sophisticated. So there's like a reason for vigilance. The evolution of threats that is out there, the changing work and social dilemmas, how trust and resilience, like building cultures of trust, is more vital than ever, I think. So I think there's still a lot of grounds to cover from that perspective. And ultimately, it's like the unpredictable, creative, and collaborative nature of people that offers both the greatest risks and the greatest hope for a safer digital future.
What gives you confidence that we can build a safer future?
A lot of wishful thinking. No, I think more resilient organization is a proven power of people. when given like the right support, the right knowledge, building that inclusive culture, individuals and teams can adapt and they can learn and they can outspace even the most sophisticated threats. So I think that's something I really believe in. That's also what drives me doing what I do every day. It's the human capacity for change. I think time and time again, organizations demonstrate that with strong leadership and psychological safety, people quickly build like new habits and they recover from setbacks with greater strength and unity. A security community also increasingly shares their challenges, solutions, and lessons learned. There's like the collective intelligence grows, turning isolated struggles more into a community breakthroughs and accelerating progress for all. I see an evolution in there as well. So that gives me confidence, like the combined impact of empowered people, courageous leaders out there, and like the collaborative spirit really gives hope that true resilient organizations are not only possible but are being built already, like every day.
Yeah, great answer, Veerle, and thank you for sharing.
No, some certainly fascinating stuff that you shared there. And could you tell us a little bit more about Cyber-HER-Strong, your vision, mission, and purpose, and of course, what the future holds for yourself personally?
Yeah, I think my vision and my mission I kind of explained here in the last couple of half an hour. Cyber-HER-Strong is really about that human aspect of cybersecurity. It's providing clarity for leaders. I hope to provide confidence for parents and like the skill set and mindset for Gen Z. It's all about inspiring. It's about becoming a storyteller within cybersecurity. I think taking into account that it's like more creating creating content for people to understand. I think I use myself still as an example. I'm a non-techie within cybersecurity. I have been a non-techie within cybersecurity now for already 10 years. I'm still surviving. But I think, and a lot of people get like still very afraid, saying like, I'm not technical, cybersecurity is like very scary. But I really hope that I can convince people that with a bit of curiosity and like a bit of a critical mindset that you already can come very far. And I hope to make like a translation of that technical part, like not so technical and very understandable through storytelling, into for organizations, for people working not within the cybersecurity department, but also towards like more society, helping from that perspective. I like to give back from that perspective as well.
No, that's great. And are there any final thoughts that you want to share with our audience, or any messages you want to put out there?
No, I hope that I will see some listeners on in the summit. I am very looking forward to meeting you guys in person in Brussels as well. I think this was very, very interesting. I liked it very much to talk about. I'm very enthusiastic when I can talk about these topics. So I hope I can inspire some sparks with some listeners as well. So.
No, I certainly feel it will. And for our audience, community members, those that want to stay connected beyond the Secure Cyber Connect community platform itself, what's the best way for them to reach out or hear more from you?
I think LinkedIn is like the most obvious and the easiest. So via a LinkedIn connection. My website is coming soon, but it's under construction. So
we'll keep our eyes out for that.
Absolutely. And Veerle, thank you so much. You're absolutely right. Your passion and insights definitely shone through on the episode, and it's been wonderful to listen to you. We want to say a huge thank you. I'm sure our community and all our listeners will have found a huge amount of value in the session. If people want to continue the discussion for more sustained engagement, as always, we invite you to join the Secure Cyber Connect community, where we offer a range of solutions across tech and security, for all professionals at no cost. Expansive community access, mutual mentoring, online networking, and exclusive interviews such as this with panel discussions, masterclasses, and live events running throughout the year and beyond. Veerle, thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you soon.